being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought
What
to
possible
avoid.
conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Gang, what's up? Aaron, Canadian Looney. So we cover Parliament, but Parliament has been out of session for the summer. It's been a long vacation for these Liberals. Anyhow, we've got John Brassard, who's the chair of the Ethics Committee, one of the most important and interesting committees that there is. And he fights fire, man. Anyhow, he's doing an interview here with Jamie Schmalley from the Blueprint, the Canadian Conservative podcast. It's pretty interesting. They're breaking down Mark Carney's conflicts of interest. And let me tell you, there is more than just one here. These Liberals. Let's take a peek. John Brassard is a very interesting person. I'm excited to watch this. Let's take a peek.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Have on John Brassard, the Member of Parliament for Barrie South Innisfil, also the chair of the Ethics Committee. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, James. Good to see you.
First time on the show, and I apologize for that.
Summer, you're looking a little tanned, eh?
Well,
what's going on?
Not tanned enough, because, you know, there's never enough sunshine.
Yeah, well, you're outdoor knocking, that's why.
We're out there, we're active.
Good.
That's absolutely. Well, you know, you're going to bring some sunlight anyway, or at least your committee is, on some pretty interesting ongoings with the Prime Minister and his long list of ethics. We're going to right off the top. We don't usually do this right off the top. Let's cut one because this goes to the campaign and this will roll into what we're talking about here. So let's, you know, we're going to expand on it in a second. So let's play cut one.
Those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you sought to avoid.
What possible conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance. Point final.
Are you saying you are not open to any conflict of interest?
Yes.
Someone spent most of his life in the private sector. There's no possible conflict of interest in your assets. That's very difficult to believe.
Look inside yourself, Rosemary. I mean, you start from a prior of conflict and ill will.
Okay, that was before the election. Everything's all good. You know, don't talk about it. You guys are all crazy to even bring this up. Post-election. Show the screenshot. Oh, there it is. 103 companies.
Yeah. Well, I think the Prime Minister at that point, well, he wasn't the Prime Minister, was misinforming and disinforming. Mm-hmm. You and I are old enough to remember when that used to be called lying.
Yes.
To Canadians point blank, saying that he had nothing. In fact, at one point on March 28th, during the campaign, he said that he only owned cash and properties. He said he didn't own any investments. Mm-hmm. And of course, we found out that he's had to declare 103 conflicts of interest on the investments that he owns in a stock portfolio that includes 573 stocks, not the least of which is Brookfield, that's well known, but companies in the United States. Over 90% of his portfolio is in the United States, James.
So Brookfield, the company that he moved as chair of the board of directors to New York because it was tough to do business in Canada. So the Prime Minister of Canada moving his company into the United States.
Did that while he was still chair back in November.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So all these conflicts, you know what? Maybe we're being too hard on him, right? He's got a big portfolio lined up. He's got lots of moving parts. Bill Morneau, the former finance minister, forgot about his French villa when he had to disclose his assets. So maybe it's possible.
I don't think so.
No, it's not.
Honestly,
I'm being
it's a rhetorical
Yes.
question. I get it, but you know, the problem is when you are the Prime Minister and you're in the Prime Minister's office, you wield a tremendous amount of power when it comes to decision making. Now, I know that he set up an ethics screen. The ethics screen is going to be applied by two people that he appointed personally as chief of staff and the Privy Council president.
Right. So people he knows that are bound to stand up for him for sure, right? To really call him out when he's doing wrong.
And what's been interesting about his comments about this, Carney that is, and similar to Trudeau, I've complied with all of the ethics rules. Yes, he's complied with perhaps with the ethics rules, but we've never been in a situation like we're in now where we have a prime minister coming in from the private sector with a mass array of investments that obviously he disclosed, which, by the way, he disclosed on a Friday afternoon thinking nobody would notice. But now he's got tremendous power. He wields tremendous power in the Prime Minister's office. And the tangled web of conflict in that decision-making power is going to be very, very difficult, in my opinion, for him to navigate, right? Like, because, look, there's cabinet discussions that goes on. There's discussions within the Prime Minister's office that happens. For him to recuse himself or not be involved in any of that is going to be difficult for any reasonable thinking person to assume that he's not going to be involved in many of those discussions. And so, Brookfield, you mentioned them, for example. There's three areas that Brookfield is involved with. Number one, and these are major policy platforms that the Prime Minister has run on. Number one is housing. They're a big owner of modular housing. The Prime Minister has mentioned modular housing many times during the course of the campaign and subsequent to his election. The other one is EV infrastructure across the country. We're obviously seeing the EV mandates coming into effect. Brookfield benefits from that directly because of the EV infrastructure that they put in. And the third one is on artificial intelligence and AI data centers that Brookfield is heavily invested in. The Prime Minister, Carney, has stock options, deferred stock units, all of these things within his portfolio. If Brookfield does well as a result of governmental policy, then a reasonable thinking person would assume that the Prime Minister's financial portfolio would do well as well, regardless of whether it's in a blind trust or whether there's an ethics screen in place. This is the tangled web that we are weaving right now. And so, what's the solution? Well, the committee, I think, needs to come back and work with the ethics commissioner on this to try to figure out some way to get some accountability or some oversight on the ethics screens process, right? Because like I said, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we're discussing a policy thing, Prime Minister. He potential is that he's going to benefit from that. What I see needs to happen, because we really are in uncharted territory with this, particularly with this Prime Minister coming from the private sector into public office. We need that accountability and that oversight to be put in place, and it needs to be independent, not by a politically appointed chief of staff or clerk of the Privy Council. It needs to be independent. Perhaps, that power needs to go to the ethics commissioner. But, obviously the solution to this, in my opinion, would be to sell all those assets and then truly put them in a blind trust with a trustee so that you don't know where that money is being invested. If you want to gain public trust, Jamie, that's the only way in this case I see the course and direction that the Prime Minister can go, but he hasn't done that. He's still invested. There's still stock options, deferred stock units. There's, if the company does well, he'll continue to do well down the road. He may not necessarily think that he may think that he's immune to this. But he's not, and I think there's some things that the committee will need to look at as we go forward.
Well, even Nathaniel Erskine-Smith, the Liberal member from the Beaches in Toronto, he was the housing minister for like 10 minutes, and the election happened, and he sold all his investments and removed any potential conflict of interest, thinking he'd be back in cabinet, and he wasn't. So Mark Carney continues along this path. Let's put up that list of all the investments, which is absolutely incredible. And the one thing you notice from this as well, the majority, the vast majority of the investments are companies in the United States.
Over 90% of his portfolio is invested in the United States. First of all, I'd suggest that maybe you might want to look at buying stocks in these companies. I say that tongue in cheek, but again, when you go down that list and you look at Brookfield Asset Management, Brookfield Renewable Partners, Brookfield Infrastructure Partners, obviously, one of the major policy platforms of the Prime Minister is massive infrastructure projects. Yes, he may not, in his mind, be involved in the decision-making process, but on the back end of that, how much does he benefit from these stock options or deferred stock units? Brookfield Business Partners, Brookfield Global Transition Fund, renewable partners, as I said earlier, about the EV infrastructure, right? We've got an EV mandate coming in, a major policy platform that all the auto manufacturers are fighting against, that we are saying is not practical in today's environment as a conservative party. Renewable Partners stands to benefit. So again, on the back end of that, how does he benefit? But look at all of this, all of the, and that's just one page.
Yeah, that's just
okay.
one page.
So there's
more. Yeah.
there's 573 different companies that he owns stocks or options in. There's 103 conflicts of interest and screens that he's placed up. But we also know too, for example, that just after the election, he met with a natural gas company that is solely owned by Brookfield Brookfield Energy, and he also met with Sam Pollock as well. So there's been two circumstances where he's met, even though he claimed that he had no conflict of interest, and then subsequently declared conflicts of interest. He met with two representatives of companies from Brookfield after the election when he shouldn't have. So again, it comes down to a matter of public trust. People have to be able to trust that their politicians are not benefiting as a result of the decisions they make and with the tremendous power of the Prime Minister's office.
And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with a healthy portfolio, investment portfolio, but you can't come into office on a lie. You can't tell Canadians there's nothing to see here. You're all crazy for even bringing it up, and all of a sudden come out with this laundry list of conflicts. But not only that, as you pointed out, a lot of the policies will benefit Mark Carney's investment portfolio. And
Right.
again, this is what we talk about, the difference between liberals and conservatives, right? We want a free market that allows, the small ones to compete with the big corporations and help grow and scale up and all that stuff. But the big government, people who love big government, only want a certain amount of companies controlling most of the way business happens, right? You look at those companies; those aren't mom and pop investments. He's not a venture capitalist trying to get equity in a startup. Those are big, massive corporations that are going to benefit. So you don't actually get innovation that benefits the consumer. You don't get a better product or better service or better price when you only have a few. Look at our telecommunications industry or whatever here in Canada. You get government managed investment. You get government managed innovation, really, is what you're doing, because it's based on a political agenda, which is the EV mandate is one. And
Housing, modular housing is another one.
Housing, right?
Perfect example. Just a few weeks ago, Brookfield bought a modular housing company out of Wingham, Ontario. Now, of course, they're in business. They're asset management. They've got massive portfolio all over Canada and all over the United States. But when the former chair of that company comes out and says that my major housing policy platform will be modular housing, that again, Jamie, would cause a reasonable person to think, why are they doing that? What do they know? And who's going to benefit from that? And if he's got deferred stock options or stock units in there that he's going to benefit from, I think most Canadians, at least most reasonable thinking Canadians, should be saying, this isn't right? And the only way that he can avoid that perception of a conflict, because as you know, a perception of a conflict sometimes is much worse than the conflict itself, if you can believe that. The only way that he can do that is to sell those assets and make sure that they're fully given to somebody who can, a trustee where the Prime Minister of the country has no idea where those investments are. To sell the assets and then have them reinvest, have that trustee reinvest the assets so that the Prime Minister doesn't know. Now, the trustee may invest them in the same things, but you can't.
You don't make your decisions based on what you have in your portfolio.
And it's all about perception. And so Brookfield's running around now buying assets that they know are major policy platforms of the Carney government. And so Canadians, it's funny because we used to think these things were wrong, but I don't see much pushback on this from Canadians.
No. Canadians, the media seems to yawn about this one.
They do,
which is weird.
Have we become so accustomed to lack of transparency, corruption, cronyism? All of the stuff that we used to detest as a nation in our politicians, have we become so complicit, and not necessarily complicit, but so complacent on this that it doesn't matter anymore. And the other thing, and you talk about industry, I mean, you look at what's going to happen now with Bill C-5 and the massive infrastructure bill. I guarantee you the lobbyists
the same thing.
They're lining up right now. The connected insiders to the Liberal Party, the lobbyists, the family members and former staffers. And Andrew Bevan, who ran the Liberal campaign, started his own lobbying firm a week after the election. The lineup on Wellington Street will go to the Shadow Laurier of lobbyists, connected insiders, cronies, Liberal Party. Like, they're just going to be standing there, hat in hand in hand.
We'll donate to the party, or we'll do this.
Well, they're going to try. They're going to try everything they can to benefit from what's coming up, right? So our job as a committee, and certainly Michael Barrett's job as ethics critic, and our team, is to make sure that we shed light on what's going on, right? And that it's transparent and accountable to Canadians. And that's really the work of the committee. And so, you know, I jokingly don't call it the ethics committee. I call it the shooting fish in a barrel committee, because, oh, look, another, you know, ethics scandal, or, you know, we've got access to information problems that are going on right now where the government is sealing documents. Like, we're not the United States. We don't seal documents. We're either accountable and transparent, or we're not, right, of where tax dollars are going. And so, you know, I expect that it's going to be a very, very busy fall for our ethics committee, holding this government to account. And we're fortunate that we're an oversight committee. There's three of them, as you know, government operations and public accounts. We hold the majority, and so our job is to make sure that we hold the government to account, and that's what we're going to do.
Well, the number of lobbyists in Ottawa grew under Justin Trudeau, and it's only going to get bigger, as you just mentioned, under Mark Carney, because the way that the policies are structured, those connected to government will get the contracts. Everyone else will suffer because you are doing your business plan on government ideology. And not only that, when you're going back to the modular housing, right? The Conservative Party's view, yes, modular housing is one piece of the puzzle, but there are multiple pieces to put this puzzle together, right? It might be tiny homes, it might be this, it might be that. You have a multiple so that the market can choose, and you have options.
It's lumber. Yeah. And who owns lumber companies that supply modular homes? Brookfield Asset Management. Okay, so it's a really tangled web, and we're talking about a domestic web. We're not talking about the international web and the Chinese element to Brookfield's connection. And of course, we all know that Mark Carney secured a $250 million loan from the Chinese communist regime. We had the BC ferry situation. You saw the Transportation Committee over the summer dealing with that, about supplying $1 billion loan, guaranteed loan, to a Chinese state-owned enterprise to build ferries for BC. So how much of that is quid pro quo? I mean, all of this stuff, you know, the one thing I've learned, I've talked to you about this before, there are no secrets in Ottawa, right? We will always find out when there's indiscretion, and, you know, to the magnitude of what we're potentially facing here with conflicts of interest related to the Prime Minister and all of the others in the industry that's being built. You talked about lobbyists. We had the lobbying commissioner come in. Two things on that. We had the lobbyist commissioner come in, and she said that the lobbying community in Ottawa has almost doubled in the last, since 2017, if you can believe it. Well, I wonder why, because look at all the consultants that have been hired, et cetera. But the other thing that hasn't been done too is we haven't had a review of the lobbying legislative review, which we're supposed to have every 5 years. We haven't had one since 2012. The last one was supposed to be done in 2017 and 22, and yet we still haven't done it. So, you know, I know that in speaking with Nancy, she's made some significant changes to the lobbying registry and qualifications and all of that stuff. But we need to have a legislative review because, like I said, many of the connected insiders to the Liberal Party are salivating at the prospect of, you know, their financial future being benefited as a result of what's going on.
Yeah, they're going to get paid. They're going to get paid, and Canadians are going to be stuck with the bill.
And that's what we need to keep. And that's what we, as an ethics committee, that's what we, as an opposition, every opposition party needs to keep an eye on. But most importantly, James, every Canadian needs to watch this because, you know, if there's anything, you know, in my 61 years that I've learned about Canadians, they don't like corruption. They don't like cronyism. They don't like any of that stuff. Look at when, you know, all of this stuff was litigated in the past Parliament. You look at how upset people were about the conflicts, the scandals, the corruption, and all of that stuff. I'm going to suggest that the potential exists for that to be minor in comparison to what potentially exists as a result of, the connections that the Prime Minister has and other issues that may come up over the course of the next Parliament.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable how little attention the media has given this. They ran a few stories, they kind of checked the box and moved on.
Yeah.
A $16 glass of orange juice took down a Conservative minister.
Exactly.
Like,
I know.
It's unreal what the Liberals get away
But
with.
you see the reaction, and you saw it at the video. The video at the beginning.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. We
like,
can.
how dare you ask me that question?
It'd be a great opportunity to play it again now if we could pull it up.
Yeah,
but
can we cue up cut one again?
But the absolute disdain that he shows for even being questioned about it, and then he was proven to lie about it. Right? It's been proven. Play it again because this is an amazing clip.
Those assets should be publicly disclosed within 120 days, which means you'll campaign in a coming federal election, most likely within the next 120 days, and are serving as Prime Minister now, with Canadians not being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you
What
sought to
possible
avoid.
conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules.
Complying with the rules.
Just stop the tape right there. Just stop the tape. Look at the body language.
I know. Yeah.
Like, how dare you ask me that?
He didn't know.
Who do you think you are?
He didn't know, presumably, in that clip, he didn't know that he had 573 investments in companies across North America, 93% of which were in the United States. He didn't know when that question was asked. Because that question was asked during the election campaign, and he had to file his disclosure shortly after the election campaign. He didn't buy 573 stocks from that period to when he had to disclose them. So, clearly he was lying there. We can't believe a word that he says when it comes to his. So why are we to believe that somehow he's going to shield himself from an ethics screen from two politically appointed people, his chief of staff and the clerk of the Privy Council? And it's not just, Jamie, it's not just the discussions directly with the Prime Minister's office. It's broader discussions that happen around the cabinet table, right? So what's he going to do? Is he going to walk out of the room at a discussion on a cabinet table on a major infrastructure project as it relates to pipelines with Brookfield or housing with Brookfield or EVs with,
even if he does, his ministers know the connection.
It's impossible to believe.
They will know the connection.
It's impossible to believe that he will not be in some way involved in the decision-making process as the Prime Minister of this country. And a reasonable thinking person would come to that conclusion that there is no way that he will not be involved in these decisions.
The other sad point, we gotta get out of here. We're over time. But the other point is all this instability. Canadians are worried about jobs, inflation's still out of control, housing, all of that. The Prime Minister's portfolio benefits with a lot of this instability in Canada. Like his investments, as the Prime Minister of Canada, you should be confident enough in the country and its economy and its companies to invest there. That's not where his investments are going. And as the United States grows, as their economy continues to grow, he's going to make more money.
With over 90% of his stock portfolio invested in the United States, doesn't matter whether Canada does well. If the Americans do well, he does well in his stock portfolio. That's clearly evident by his disclosure.
Yeah, and then goes to that government report that says if we keep on this current trajectory, in about 2040, we'll all be hunting and foraging for food outside the elite class, and that's where we're at. John, the show's pretty much out of time, but I always give the guests the last word. The floor is yours.
Well, I go back to 2020 during the height of COVID. And a good friend of ours, Warren Kinsella, a very good friend of Gord Brown, who we all respect, a lost colleague who was the whip of this party. Warren Kinsella wrote at 2020 that the kleptocracy in this country was alive and well. Because if you recall in 2020, during the height of COVID, there were billions of dollars. We had the Arrive scandal. Weed Charity. Anybody who was connected to the Liberal Party was benefiting. He wrote about the kleptocracy in 2020 in an article, and I remember standing up in the House of Commons, and I quoted Warren at that time. And what a kleptocracy is, so that your viewers understand, is that those who are in government find ways to enrich themselves and their friends at the expense of those who they govern over, right? And I would suggest to you that under Trudeau and now under Carney, if you have a little vision here, the kleptocracy will continue. There will be well-connected insiders, family members, those connected to the Liberal Party, cronies, lobbyists who are going to benefit significantly as a result of the policies that are going to come from this Liberal government. I don't want our Prime Minister to benefit financially from it. And I'm concerned right now, given the shadow of his ethics screen and what we know of his investments, that the potential for a Prime Minister to benefit as a result of the decisions that he and his cabinet makes, even though he says he's going to be away from those cabinets, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, or cabinet decisions, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm concerned, and Canadians and reasonable thinking people should be concerned about the potential conflicts of interest that our Prime Minister has. It's not just enough to comply to the rules, it's enough to be away from everything so that public trust is gained in every decision, because the minute he makes a decision or his government makes a decision on modular homes, Jamie, for example, that's the minute that we should all question why that decision was made. And it's not that, look, we need
pick one?
We need housing. The only way to limit that is for him to sell his assets in their entirety so that there's no concern at all about not just him benefiting, but why he and his government has made the decision that they have. So
Couldn't agree with you more.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations, you're spending more money on taxes than on food, clothing, and shelter combined.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows. These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Anyhow, what are you going to do? Trying to keep you informed. Aaron Canadian Looney trying to hit 30,000 subs. Help me get there. Thank you for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one. Later, gang.